1460 WVOX.
Stay tuned now for the Racing for Heroes radio show with host Brett Morash on 1460 WVOX.
Hey, Racing for Heroes fans, it's Brett Morash here on Racing for Heroes Radio, 1460 in your AM dial and streaming live, WVOX.com. Super excited to be here August 20th. We've got a hurricane bearing down on New York here, but Racing for Heroes is going to get through it, of course, as always. But our first guest today is no stranger to Racing for Heroes Radio. It's Elana Duffy. She is a former U.S. Army sergeant, I believe Sergeant First Class. I'm sure she'll correct me if I got it wrong, and disabled veteran. And she's going to be talking about serving in Afghanistan, in particular, working with the kind of the host nation nationals that supported her. And of course, they're all at risk for life and limb right now at the hands of the Taliban. And for those of you who don't know, Racing for Heroes has started a fundraiser for a program that we have called Operation Home to help the Afghan interpreters and their families once they're here to become integrated into American society as quickly as possible, to really help them out for their service to our country, as opposed to them being back in Afghanistan. Anyway, so Elana, you on the line? As opposed to them being back in Afghanistan. Is she on the line? So, Elana, you on the line? Should be. Having some technical difficulties.
Guess not.
Yeah. Oh, well, let's see if she's going to call back in. Anyway, but let me talk about this while she's giving it a shot calling back in. So Racing for Heroes, as you probably know, we have a lot of people that are part of our inner circle that served in various special forces groups. And in that, they did work with a lot of interpreters. Many of those interpreters right now are at high risk. There's organizations like Raven and other friends of ours that are working on getting those folks out. Christian Rouse will show up for her too, a friend of Elana and mine, working very hard getting those folks out of the country.
Got her back.
And with that, we do have Elana on the line. So Elana, how you doing?
Hi, I'm well. How are you?
Good. I think that proves an old military adage that communications always go down at the worst possible time.
Yeah. As many times as you check,
Right. It's always
somebody didn't fill the radio.
It's always the crypto. It's always the crypto guy. That's what it is. The save the radio.
Always that guy.
I was a CMS custodian back in the day, and I got some terrible stories. I don't have any good ones. I just have terrible ones. Anyway, hey, so listen, I want to thank you for being on. And I'd given the little intro before that, you'd served in an intelligence capacity. I know we can't talk about everything you did, but at the end of the day, you worked with a lot of the host nation folks that are now, had thrown their kind of weight behind us. And now that the U.S. and our allies are leaving, and of course, the events of the past few days have indicated that a lot of those folks are at risk.
Yeah. And I think that something that kind of gets overlooked, I definitely support the efforts for the special immigrant visas and so forth for people like the interpreters and the contractors and so forth. I think that what also gets overlooked is the fact that people who served in the Afghan National Army that we communicated with a lot. We got a lot of really good intelligence from them on things that like they either couldn't act on. I was also there very early in the conflict, and it was actually the early days of the Afghan National Army. And these guys were already kind of terrified of what would happen if we left their protection, because they were seen as definitive enemies of the Taliban and the insurgency. And now a lot of them are definitely at risk. It's looking more and more like most of them didn't necessarily abandon their posts, but they were kind of left hanging by their own government. So it's a tough situation to watch, especially from the perspective of the folks who work so closely with them, the teachers, any woman who wanted an education in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
So it's very, very, it's really hard to watch.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think that, I think a lot of people may feel that we went in there specifically to deal with Al Qaeda, but once we were there and we were doing the nation building, that was sort of the major mission set, I think, for a lot of folks on the ground. As you know, my kind of land tours were mostly in East Africa, but a lot of what we were doing was, winning hearts and minds, if you will, through building schools and, helping with that sort of stuff in a more humanitarian assistance way. And, that's where we were in Afghanistan for a very long period of that time, while at the same time being at high risk of Taliban attacks. And, I think that, to your point, a lot of these people that serve with the Afghan army, they're at high risk too. And I'm not sure that we're going to have the capacity to get them out before the Taliban shuts the spigot off, if you will.
Yeah. I think what is, it's heartening to some of us to see some of the old warlords heading over to the single province that is still not under Taliban control in the Northeast, and that a lot of the old Northern Alliance crew, so to speak, is up there. And my hope is that some of the Afghan National Army who can get to that province will go over there and still continue the fight that they definitely believe in. And
Right.
and I mean, it's really difficult because where do you draw the line in terms of these evacuations? I mean, the fact that we're trying to get people out in batches of like 800 in a C-17.
Yeah.
We
Stunning.
We flew on like C-130s and they're so much smaller. And, could barely fit like 40 of us and some equipment. But I can't imagine 800 people crammed into a 17.
Well, and I think that, that really indicates to you, though, that, there are people that just absolutely do not want to be living under the Taliban regime. I think you're right. I think that, I was kind of just thinking when you're talking, like, this is like a lot of ways like the New York City mayoral race, where everyone assumes, that the Brooklyn borough president's going to win this thing automatically, but, there's still they still have to do the election. And I think that what we have now is you've got the Taliban for what they are, which is still a pretty fractured group. Everyone's basically been like, I guess they're in charge, but in reality, that fight is still going to go on. And I think that we'll see an endemic civil war occur. Not to completely get behind that, but I think that this is just the beginning of another chapter in this. And unfortunately, a lot of the people that we supported directly will be involved, and many of them will lose their lives.
Yeah, and I to the fact that some people are saying like, well, we shouldn't have been there for nation building in the first place. That to me is the wrong answer, because you're not. You even mentioned hearts and minds, and that you can't really win a war unless you have the support of the people anyway. And it just shows how many hearts and minds we won by this resistance, by this fact that they are now reforming this alliance, and fighting, because they're like, no, we want our women to be educated. We want our young boys to not have to go to madrasa. Like we want this to be a free country where we can choose our leadership. And that actually shows to me some of what we were able to accomplish and instill in people by supporting the nation building for as long as we did.
For sure. And even under, and I use the term loosely, the warlords that are, in the Northern Alliance and things like that. I mean, it's not exactly the same as if you say warlords in Somali kind of context or warlords in a medieval context, because I do think that what you will see is, a continued fracture of the country into what effectively are little fiefdoms, but each one of those will always be Islamic in flavor. I don't think that that's the question. I think the question that they're going to deal with is if there is truly going to be an Islamic Republic, is it going to be under the hardline regime that the Taliban has done in the past, and it appears they are willing to reinstate, if not more so now, or it's going to be something different. Now, do I ever think that Afghanistan is going to become a major producer of like automobiles or something like that? No, it'll always be a small country, at least in my lifetime. But I think that people there have an obligation to try to live their lives as best possible.
Right. Yeah. And thank you for clarifying on the warlord front. I'm so used to the 2004. That's what they were. But no, they essentially fought for their country mostly as an alliance, sometimes against each other, but that's what's going to happen, especially in such a tribal country. We can't instill, we can't go into a country expecting them to all get along and be friends. Half the time, we're not even friends in our own country, and we've had a lot of infighting. But it's a case that they are doing what they do and what they've done for centuries, and I think that it's for them to be able to fight the way that they are capable of doing. I think that that's worth supporting. I am frustrated that Russia and China are so quick to say, okay, well, I guess we'll just deal with the Taliban by giving them, anyone who gives them legitimacy is hampering the fight.
Yes.
That's why I disagreed with us giving them any legitimacy several years ago. And for anyone who doesn't remember, in 2019 and 2020, when we were starting to negotiate with the Taliban, it just gave them legitimacy. And so now it's disheartening to see some of the countries saying, all right, well, we'll just deal with them now.
Yeah, and it's like an, oh, well, I mean,
over.
And listen, I think the current administration, they're, clearly, at this point, looking to get out of there as quickly as possible. And I'm hopeful that, this will not be, a fecklessness in the face of the Taliban, at the end of the day. And that's why I'm hopeful when I see people like Kristen Rouse that are looking to take an active role as a grassroots person, and yourself, and as I mentioned before earlier in the show, Racing for Heroes looking to help the interpreters when they return. That's important stuff.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
And supporting the visa process, supporting groups like No One Left Behind, and Veterans for American Ideals,
yeah.
and the other visa process, and supporting, and it's great that Racing for Heroes is supporting them once they do get here, because people often underestimate the amount of just everything that they need. I mean, they're coming in as refugees.
Yeah.
And
right, and they need everything.
And they need that support.
Yeah, and one of the things that we're trying to do is that when they do get here, if an interpreter had worked with like a specific, U.S. Army soldier, or, whatever, we try to get them back at least in contact with them. So maybe that's like the hand up that they can use in order to kind of help get back up on step. So anyway, but listen, Elana, I really appreciate you as always. I hope everything is going well with Pathfinder, and that, you just keep kicking butt the way you always do.
Thank you, and love to Kristen, of course. So
awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, please pass on my best. So,
Small world.
okay. Take care, Elana. Thank you for that. And with that, we have our next guest, Niurka Castaneda, who is a U.S. Army veteran. And what she's been doing since leaving the military is she actually is the host of Amor Umbrella Television out of Miami, Florida. She highlights veteran programs all around the country. And this past weekend, we hosted her down at Racing for Heroes down in Virginia, and gave her a chance to see some of the stuff that we're doing down there. So really excited to have her. Niurka, are you online?
Yes, I'm here, and thank you for having me.
No, we're super excited for you to be here. So, you were in the Army for a little while. What was your specialty when you were in the Army?
Well, I came in as a 92 Golf,
Yep.
as a cook, living with them. And then I served most of my time as a 93 Yankee supply specialist.
Gotcha. But I would like to point out though that every Army moves on its stomach, so the cooks are actually probably the most important people out there.
Definitely.
Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
For the master brides all around.
That's right. That's right. And I know you probably heard a little bit of the earlier part of the show. We were talking about immigrants coming here, in the context of the Afghan refugees that's kind of currently ongoing and the interpreters. But you grew up in Cuba and then you joined the U.S. Army, right?
Yes, I actually grew up in Cuba all the way until I was 18.
Wow.
And I moved to the United States. And a year later, I feel the need to serve this new country. And, didn't look back.
Well, listen, everyone here, for the most part in the United States, unless you're a Native American, you're an immigrant or descendant of an immigrant. And I truly appreciate the fact that, you embraced your new country so much. And then by doing so, joined the U.S. military. And I'm assuming that because you came from Cuba, you couldn't get a secret security clearance right away. So that's why you ended up as a cook. But I think it's also shows that there are important jobs no matter what.
Yes, I think every job is important. Quartermaster bride is the backbone of the military, because without food, supplies, weapons, you can't really go to war, right?
That's right. That's right.
So,
you can't go to war without that. So,
but every job is important because you need every single element to stay on it.
Yeah, yeah, and listen, I when I think of that sort of stuff, it's that sort of passion. So then you retired, you got out of the military later on, and now you are host of Amor Umbrella TV. How did that happen?
Well, somebody offered me the opportunity, and I say yes. I was the host of a podcast, and I thought, what a better way to elevate the impact I can have and actually do something to continue service and to continue helping the military community by highlighting organizations that are already helping, but maybe they're not reaching everybody that they should. Because anything about the military, we learn about resources by all the veterans, and it should be more cohesive map of information on where to go. So when they need the help, they know where to go, and hopefully we can save more lives.
Yeah. So so you've been doing this now for a little while, right? Like almost a whole year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I started early this year. It launched in July. So we're doing the soft launch right now, and then it's coming in the hard launch. But I started producing and doing interviews early January.
Well, and you're sort of like me here at Race for Heroes Radio. You're a producer as well as the host, and a woman about town. How does the production go? How do you find all these great nonprofits?
Well, I started with what I knew. I knew of some organizations that were already doing a tremendous job. And then I started doing more research. I get a lot of referrals from other veterans that want to highlight organizations that have helped them in the past as well. And because, it doesn't matter if they're small or big. What I want to highlight is organizations that are really going out of the way to help, and they might be local to you because we are very movable as the military community, so we can be everywhere.
Well, yeah, that's for sure, and I think that also shows that there are little nonprofits that are all local in nature, but they're providing an important service, right? Whatever it is. I mean, you had a chance to see Racing for Heroes the other day, and I think once you're behind the scenes, you see a lot more than is really kind of even what you're seeing on like a website.
And yes, and Racing for Heroes, they're doing tremendous because one thing that most military have in common, it's not all, is we have that sense of adrenaline. And it doesn't matter what physical limitations you have, you need to find a way to compensate for that. And what a better way to control the risk, and that's what Racing for Heroes provides. With that rush of adrenaline, who doesn't like racing? But also, it complements with other programs as well and cooperating with other organizations. Right.
And I think that, you and Mike had a conversation about that, about how in his case, this was something that just kind of grassroots grew up, where, he was finding that he was getting catharsis through the racing. And that's how a lot of these organizations find. So I'm sure that you've seen other organizations just like Racing for Heroes that have sort of grown up in that sort of way, where it's just somebody has a great idea, it makes a lot of sense, and then they have the passion to make it happen.
Yes, and like I did fishing with American Finest, and they take you out fishing in the Everglades.
Oh wow!
What a better way to get close to nature, right? You're right there. You have that sense of danger, but at the same time,
there's alligators in the Everglades.
Yeah, but you're with all the veterans. You have that sense of community.
Yep.
And you can see the difference when they go in. Everybody's moody and some angry faces, and when they come out, everybody's laughing.
Yep.
And I think that's part of the stuff we also miss as a community. That sense of community that we lose once we leave the military. So going back, being around all the people that share the same beliefs, the same values, is very important. And it helps with the integration.
And don't you think, though, that it also is not only that sense of community, but it's revolving around something that is positive in nature? Because I always found that, and listen, I'm a big fan of the American Legion for a lot of things they do, but I find that they tend at the local level to circulate around the bar. So what ends up happening is everyone sits around the bar drinking beers, and that becomes kind of the focus. And they're self-medicating using alcohol, as opposed to in like Race of Heroes case, rotating around motorsports, or in the Everglades, they're doing around fishing, right? So I think it's also that positive aspect of things that people are focusing on.
Yes, I think finding the positive way to deal and cope is the best. Nothing that is addictive in nature. It might end up having other sequels, right? So
sure.
We try to avoid those. And
don't get me wrong, I sit around and drink beers with the guys at Racing for Heroes all the time. I'm like, I don't want to discount that, but the focus really is the racing, not so much the other stuff.
Yeah, it's a sense of community. You can go and share a drink, you can share a laugh, whatever you need at that moment, you can share a meal. There's a lot of different ways to celebrate, to build community.
Yeah.
But finding the way that works for you, that's very important, and that's what my show is about. Is I'm not staying in one kind of organization because for you it might work racing. For other veterans, my work go out in the Everglades and fishing,
yoga,
and
right,
yoga, meditation, whatever programs are there.
That's
and
right.
Not only the veteran and the military, the active duty members, but also their families. Because overall, that helps the whole family. If you find your balance, then it's easy to reconnect with your family.
That's right.
It's easier to stay positive.
And Niurka, we're getting our last minute of the show here. If I want to go look at Amor Umbrella TV, where do I go?
So you can actually go to my website, and there's multiple websites you can get there. Amor Umbrella, so Love Umbrella. .com will take you to my personal website and link you to Legrity TV. Legrity is kind of legal integrity because it's funded by 2 other veterans.
Mm-hmm.
So they're big into legality and integrity.
Okay.
Right?
Good.
So,
and you have a Facebook page too, right? Is that the other place people can look?
yes. And it's all on the Amor umbrella.
Gotcha. All right. Well, Niurka, thank you for being on the show. I'm looking forward to talking to you again, and hopefully we'll have you up at Race of Heroes soon enough. Okay.
Definitely.
All right. Thanks so
See
much.
you again.
All right. And Race of Heroes, we are in the last minute of our show here. Again, if you have a chance today, go on GoFundMe.com and look up Operation Home. You can see what we're doing, trying to help these Afghan interpreters. They put their lives on the line for our nation. We owe it to them to do all we can to make their lives as good as they can once they come here, as we evacuate Americans and walk away from Afghanistan in the way we've been doing in the past 20 years. So I'll leave it at that. And, you know, at the end of the day, I'm just excited to be here, and I hope to see everyone here again next week as we have our next show, and which will be right before our first 1-year anniversary. All right. Thanks, everyone. And there's the real Doug Lane for our end of the show music.
Down the road.